And before I explain the rules so that our lay audience can understand, I would require that everyone please be silent. This is the most difficult event presented here today. They only have one speech plan. The rest of the speeches need to be impromptu, and they need time to think, and they need silence to think. So if everyone could please stay silent from this moment on, we would, me and the debaters and everyone and the judges would completely appreciate this. Thank you. So, to introduce our debaters today, on this side, we have Buddhism is a philosophy. Our first speaker today will be Camilla. Yeah, I will. So our first speaker on this team will arguing for Buddhism is in fact a philosophy is the topic for their side. This is Camilla. Next up we have Uluwag, and lastly we have Tisun. On the opposing side, our first speaker will be Pasindhu. Our second speaker will be Kavindra. And our third speaker will be Samoda. You look like your sister. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Alright, so before we begin, the timing today will be 3 minutes for the constructive speech, which is the speech that will give all the points. And we have 3 minutes for the rebuttal speech, which is the speech that will argue against the initial speech. And we have 2 minutes for a summary speech, as the name implies, you summarize. And our last speech will be the final focus. Between each of our speakers, there will be a crossfire, except for Samoda and Tisun, just because time doesn't permit. But they will be able to engage in a grand crossfire, which may become violent, I'm warning you now, where they all stand up and they all yell at each other, basically. So that is probably the most exciting part of this debate. But I advise you, judges and audience, to listen, not so much to what you think, but rather how they argue and how they argue against each other, whether or not they've dropped points, whether or not they've extended points that the opposing side hasn't brought up or hasn't argued enough. Because this topic is very vague, in my opinion, and can go both ways. So instead of trusting your own judgment, audience, trust whether or not they've argued their points efficiently. So before, so I think that's it. We're good to go. Also, this year we're incorporating, I think we did as last year as well, prep time, which I will be keeping track of. Prep time is 2 minutes for either side. As I said, since the rebuttal speech and the final focus and everything is difficult, they will get they can use up to 2 minutes for anything they want. So for example, if Tisun wants a minute for his summary speech, I will deduct 1 minute from his 2 minutes of prep time, and he can prep for that. See if I missed anything. I think that's it. So our first speech will be 3 minutes long, and I will be timing, and I will give you a 1 minute signal when you have 1 minute left for each speech, okay? And I'll stop you if the crossfire gets too heated, and we'll begin. Are you ready, debaters? Okay, so our first speaker will be Pasindhu. Now that side again, is arguing for Buddhism is a way of life. Whenever you're ready, I'll start timing.
Venerable Mahasangha, judges, family and friends, my team and I stand in the firmest affirmation of the resolution. Resolved, Buddha is a way of life. Firstly, I would like to offer a definition of a way for clarity's sake. The typical pattern of behavior of a person or group. Now we must first discuss the burden of proof for each side. To win this debate, the team that should win be the team that proves they are more than right than the other. If Buddhism was 360 degrees, then the team that covers 360 degrees, or at least close, should be the team that wins. With that said, we strongly support that Buddhism, one of the most prominent doctrines of nirvana, or an absolute release of the chains of birth and death, is a way of life. Opposed to Buddhism as a philosophy is a study of affairs or a wise composure in dealing with problems. Buddhism is not just a way for dealing with problems, it is a way to live a happy life. The Buddha created the Eightfold Path to help us end suffering. The Eightfold Path is something that we use and practice at every moment possible. Contention 1. Buddhism is not only helps us but with the problems, rather it guides us on the right path because it helps us live a happy life. The method map is a tool used in Stephen's class to help us learn how to tackle everyday problems in a practical Buddhist way. The reason this is important is to learn how the metta map is not a philosophy or something we just study. We physically and mentally use it so we can relieve stress. Contention 2. The Eightfold Path is crucial towards our lives, and we use it in our daily practice. Again, the definition of philosophy is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, existence, especially when considered as an academic discipline. The key word in this definition is study. When you study, you just learn and take in information, but when you apply it to your daily lives, that's when it becomes a way of life. A real example of someone taking in this information and using it is our friend Bo. For those of you who don't know who Bo is, he is a double murderer who lives in prison. But do you know what he's doing now? He's using the Dharma and the Eightfold Path, and now he's even trying to write a book on meditation in prison. The Attadipa Sutta states, people, be islands into yourselves, be your own refuge, having no other. Let the Dhamma be an island and refuge to you, having no other. Those who are islands unto themselves should investigate to the very heart of things. This clearly tells us that we should not rely on anyone else but ourselves and the Dhamma. Just like Dr. Hawkins, even though he was a Catholic, he adopted Buddhism, a way of life, and ultimately achieved enlightenment. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Next up will be Kamila on the side of philosophy in his constructive speech, 3 minutes long. Good luck.
Venerable monks, distinguished guests, judges, family, and friends. My name is Kamila. Me and my friends Ulu and Tisun are here to debate that Buddhism is indeed a philosophy. My first contention is Buddhism is the search for truth and wisdom, and the definition of a philosophy is the rational investigation of the truth. Therefore, Buddhism is clearly a philosophy. Also, the Buddhist philosopher, as his nickname was Vijaya, which meant the great analyzer. My second contention is we should figure out what we believe to be true by finding it out ourselves, not just accepting it. The Buddha once went to the village of Kesaputta, and the villagers, the Kalamas, asked him why they should believe in Buddhism instead of any other religion. The Buddha stated that these religions might be good, but you must test them yourself, and you must see if they are true. You must question and examine them to find if they are true, not just accept what they are saying. This story has been known as the Kalama Sutra. My third contention is that Buddhism is based on logic, and logic involves searching for the truth, and philosophy is based on the search for truth. Buddhism then can be defined as a philosophy. A philosopher is a person who thinks on their own based on what they believe to be true. And they find out what they believe to be true by questioning and examining everything they hear. This is why many famous philosophers, such as Plato, Galileo, Socrates, and Aristotle, were persecuted because what they thought challenged and questioned daily life. Additionally, the Buddha would like us to do this. He said he not only allows, but he encourages us to examine and question his beliefs so that we can fully understand what he is saying, examine it, and use it. Overall, Buddhism is clearly a philosophy that can be proven to be true if we examine it and question it. Thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful Vesak.
Alright, so now we will have crossfire for 3 minutes between Pasadu and Kamila. The two debaters can stand up or sit down. I recommend standing up. You can do either. So this time I will cut you off if either of you go off of 3 minutes, just to save time. 3 minutes.
Excuse me, we have a question here. Is that the rebuttal one or what is
No, this is the crossfire. You don't have to. You don't have to flow this. It's just how they're gonna ask each other questions.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not a speech. It's not a speech. Sorry.
You're not grading that.
You are grading it, but there's no place to write it down. Usually, you just take note of it in your head. Whenever you're ready. Whenever one of you asks the first question, I'll start timing.
Can you please tell us again the definition of a philosophy?
A philosophy is the rational investigation of the truth and principles of being, knowledge, or conduct.
Tell me, how would you investigate the truth?
We would investigate the truth by questioning what we believe to be true, not just accepting what is told to us. We would examine it, question it, and see if it is true in our eyes.
But to investigate, wouldn't you have to, like, for Buddhism, wouldn't you have to practice the Buddha's teachings? Wouldn't you have to practice his teachings?
Well, not only practice it, we have to see if it works. We have to see if it actually makes sense. We have to question it and keep questioning so that we understand it more fully.
But isn't that practicing? Isn't that a way of life?
Questioning is not practicing. Practicing is just saying it again and again, just because they tell you to.
But to fully understand, but to fully investigate the truth, wouldn't you have to practice the teachings?
Questioning again is not practicing. It's thinking of why does this make sense? What's wrong with it? Why is it like this? It's not the same as practice.
But investigating is not just thinking.
Can you repeat the question?
Investigating is not just thinking.
Investigating is thinking about why it doesn't work, what is wrong with it, why you believe it's not true. And by answering those questions, we can help understand why it is true and why the Buddha believes that.
But isn't that actually doing a practice? Isn't that doing something? Isn't that a way of life?
Well, again, a practice is a repetition. It's doing it over and over again. And these questions are made you don't ask the same question again and again and again. You ask different questions at different times.
I don't want to go back and forth, but you said the Buddha has said himself that not only to read his suttas, but actually practice meditation and practices. So
in meditation, we learn to concentrate. And we learn to concentrate so that we can find these questions and we can evaluate what we learn better and more better so that we can understand it fuller.
But meditation is a way of life. It's not just, you don't just investigate meditation. You actually meditate in our class with our teacher, Stephen.
Well, when you meditate, you learn to concentrate. And you can definitely use that in seeing anything that you in questioning everything that you see in the Buddhist text. Like anything you see, if you can concentrate well and good enough, we can help find questions.
Isn't
go ahead.
Isn't meditation a practice? It's a practice. It's not just suttas in a book or like suttas that the Buddha has taught. It's a practice.
Well, the Buddha once said, you should do your work, for the Tathagatas only teach you the way. This is the same thing because these sutras only teach you the way. You must do the work yourself and find out what you believe to be true yourself.
Closing comment from Pasandu, and then it's time. Go ahead, finish your thought if you had one.
I would like to say that like the practices we do in class with Stephen, those are a way of life. We don't just do it once. It's actually a way of life. That's why we come here every Sunday, try to achieve enlightenment through these practices the Buddha has taught us.
That's time. Okay, next up.
May I have 1 minute to gather my thoughts?
So Kavindra wants 1 minute of prep time, so I'll start the timer now.
Actually, could I cut the timer back?
That would be 34 seconds of prep time. Whenever you're ready, Kaveen. This will be 3-minute rebuttal speech by the side of Way of Life, spoken by Kavindra. Whenever you're ready.
Judges ready? Opponents ready? Ready?
Yes.
So as Kamila stated, he said that Buddhism is the search for knowledge, correct? So a search is in fact a way of life, because a philosophy, the definition of a philosophy is a study. So when you just study, you just gather information and you take it in. But when you actually put it into your lifestyle, that's when it becomes a way of life. So that argument should be dropped. And you said we should read and examine, the key word there, examine the text of the Buddha